Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 115. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
All right, so tonight we have something a little different.
Different? What?
Yeah, this
one. All right,
one...
spiced it up.
Yeah, we're mixing this up a lot.
Oh, a lot. Okay, let's rock.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin anything at all, but let's just note that I wanted to do this case since our first episode, but
holy crap,
it doesn't fall under our normal purview.
All right, I like expansion of scope. We can do that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, and when we get to the end, I'll have you guys give me your thoughts on what you think, because maybe it does fall under what we normally do, but you'll see when we get there. Does that make sense?
All right, you've hooked me. I'm in.
Awesome. So here's your teaser. After a group of experienced hikers on an expedition went up a mountain and had not reported back for roughly 2 weeks since they said they would, but nearly a month after they had left, rescue efforts were underway. This is February of 1959 in Siberia within the Soviet Union. So it's not
so we're way back and way over there.
Yeah, and it's not exactly warm.
No.
Yeah, not even close. So when search parties found the group's campsite, they found no one there. They also found that the tent had been cut open from the inside, and there were footprints in the snow leading away from the tent. But some of the prints had someone wearing one shoe and one sock, and other prints, they were barefoot in the snow. Yeah.
Whoa.
The tracks led towards a wooded area, but the tracks were eventually covered by snow because they had been gone for a while. And and wherever they may have led them, that was kind of lost for, at least in terms of the immediate search. So
I was going to say those tracks can't possibly last very long because it's going to be snowing to cover them up.
Exactly. So this is the bizarre case known as the Dyatlov Pass. So I'm assuming neither of you have heard of this.
No.
The word Dyatlov sounds familiar, but maybe it's just because I've watched Anastasia too many times.
Yeah, maybe it's like a common-ish last name because it's named after the leader of this expedition.
All right. Well, who knows?
So on January 23rd, 1959, 10 hikers set out for a winter trek through Russia's Ural Mountains. The group was formed for a skiing expedition across the northern Urals in Sverdlovsk Oblast in the Soviet Union. Now, 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov was a radio engineering student at the then-named Ural Polytechnical Institute, and he assembled a group of 9 other hikers for the trip, most of whom were his peers and fellow students at the university. Now, this group consisted of 8 men and 2 women. The leader of the expedition was Dyatlov, but the others included Yuri Doroshevsko, Ludmila Dubinina, Georgy Krivonshchenko, Alexander Kolevatov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Thibodeau Brignoles, Semyon Zolotaryov, and finally Yuri Yudin.
I'm sorry, what were those names again?
Yeah, as much as I want to honor these individuals in this episode, for saying their names over and over again, I'm going to try to avoid.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I just don't. My Russian's just not that good.
Not as good as it used to be, you know?
Yeah, certainly not. So each member of this group were experienced grade 2 hikers with ski tour experience, and they would be receiving grade 3 certification upon their return.
Yeah, this is a pretty badass expedition to go on.
What qualifies as a grade 2?
I didn't really look that up, but it's quite. I don't think I could do it if I'm being honest. I mean, I don't even know what a grade
there's
1 is.
hiking in the winter in Siberia. That's pretty hardcore.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, that sounds insane.
So at the time, grade 3 was the highest certification available in the Soviet Union, and it required that candidates traveled 300 kilometers or 190 miles.
Wow.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
So the route was designed by Dyatlov's group and to reach the far northern regions of the oblast that they were in, to the upper streams of the Lozva River. The goal of the expedition was to reach Otorten, which is a mountain 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles north of the site where this incident is going to take place. So on January 23rd, 1959, the Dyatlov group was issued their route book, which listed the course, following a thing called Number 5 Trail, and they left the city that same day. They arrived by train at Ivdel, a town at the center of the northern province, in the early morning hours of January 25th. They then had to take a truck to another town called Vizhai, a village which is the last inhabited settlement to the north of where they're going. So at this point, they're going so far up that there's no one else around them.
Wow, they're like north.
Yes, although I did check it on the map, and it's not like the northernmost part of Russia or even Siberia, but with the mountain ranges, I'm guessing, no one's going up there.
What'd you say it was called?
Scream.
Vizhai, Vizhai.
Sverdlovsk Oblast, Russia.
Exactly. See, you pronounced it better than I did. Jesus.
I can sound things out. Maybe I should be in charge of saying the names on this podcast.
Right? I'll just text you what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is way up there. That looks cold. Purely based on latitude.
I mean, it's up there, and just the mountain. I mean, snowy mountains in general kind of freak me out, so I'm good. They can keep it.
Yeah. No, this is badass. I reiterate.
So on January 27th, they began their trek towards Gora Otorten. On January 28th, the next day, one of the members, Yuri Yudin, who had several health ailments, including rheumatism and a congenital heart defects, had to turn back due to knee and joint pain, and that made him unable to continue the hike.
Yeah, that makes sense. Joint pain in that kind of cold? Ow.
I mean, I don't know. If you had rheumatism to begin with, why would you even consider something like that?
I mean, if you already got the what was it, like level 2 certification?
Right. That's true. But still, I don't know. Maybe he's a bigger badass than I am. Let me put it that way.
These people are all bigger badasses than we are.
True. Very true. So diaries and cameras found around their campsite made it possible for authorities to track the group's route up to the day preceding the incident. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is coming from that.
The incident.
Yes, I'm being vague on purpose.
All right. It's very ominous.
So on January 31st, the group arrived at the edge of the highland area and began to prepare for climbing. In a wooded valley, they cached a surplus of food and equipment that would be used for their trip back, which is really smart, and I can't believe I wouldn't have thought to do that. But
yeah, that is really smart. So you're not carrying all that all the way up.
And in case you did start to run out of food or something when you were coming back down, you were like resupplied.
Yeah.
So if someone was really fucking hungry, they can't eat more than their rations. You know what I mean?
True.
So the next day, the hikers started to move through the pass, which at this point is unnamed. It seemed that they planned to get over the pass and make camp for the next night on the opposite side. But because of worsening weather conditions, there were snowstorms and decreasing visibility, They lost their direction and they deviated a little less towards the top of the Kholat Syakhl. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Syakhl. Syakhl? I don't know.
Sure.
Guess is as good as mine.
Exactly. So when they realized their mistake, the group decided to set up camp there on the slope of the mountain rather than move 1.5 kilometers, or almost a mile, downhill to a forested area that would have offered them more shelter from the weather.
And that's going to come back to bite them in the ass.
Well, Yuri Yudin speculated that he thinks Igor Dyatlov he probably did not want to lose the altitude that they had gained, or that he decided maybe they should just practice camping on the mountain slope. Entirely possible either way.
It sounds like a death sentence.
But these guys sound like people that are pushing their limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before the team had left, Igor Dyatlov had agreed that he would send a telegram to their sports club as soon as the group returned to the town of Vizhai. It was expected that would happen no later than February 12th. But Igor had told Yuri, before Yuri had departed the group, that he expected it might take a little longer than the 12th. So when the 12th passed and no messages had been received, there was no immediate action taken. As, delays by a few days in doing something like this weren't entirely uncommon, especially in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
However, on February 20th, the travelers' relatives demanded that a rescue operation take place, and then the head of the institute sent the first rescue groups, which consisted of volunteer students and teachers, so not professionals.
Ooh, that sounds like a recipe to get more people stuck.
Right? Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I guess that we're going to assume they're all experienced, but I agree with you. It's a little weird. So later, when they didn't find anything, the army and the police forces became involved, and they started using planes and helicopters to join in the search. On February 26th, the searchers found the group's abandoned and heavily damaged tent on Kholat Syakhl. The campsite baffled the searching party.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you're not dealing with professionals.
Well, the student who found the tent said the tent was torn down, half torn down and covered in snow. It was empty, and all the group's belongings, including some of their shoes, were left behind. The team found the hikers' boots, clothing, and equipment neatly arranged inside the tent, and there was food sliced up on a plate as if they were sitting down to prepare to eat it. And that's
weird.
And they said that's when they realized the tent had been cut open from the inside to get out. Nine sets of footprints left by people wearing only socks or a single shoe or barefoot could be followed, leading down to the edge of a nearby wooded area on the opposite side of the pass, about 1.5 kilometers, or almost a mile, to the northeast. It's at this point that the tracks are covered in snow, but at the forest edge, under a large Siberian pine, researchers found the visible remains of a small campfire. There, they found 2 bodies.
Oh, God.
Those were Georgy Krivonshenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were both shoeless, lying only in their underwear next to the remains of the fire.
Oh, God.
What the heck happened here?
Winter in February in Siberia.
Yeah.
Shoeless and in their underwear.
What the hell?
That right there is automatically a disaster.
The medical examiner would later note that Georgy had burns on his body and that he had bitten off a piece of his own hand and it was still in his mouth.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, something did not go right here.
So Yuri Shoroshenko had gray skin and there was foam coming out of his mouth.
Oh no, did they eat something poisoned?
We're gonna keep going because
right, well, that's my current theory. That or rabies, yeah.
The branches on a nearby tree were broken up to 5 meters high, suggesting that someone might have climbed up them to maybe look for something or someone. They were on those branches leading up, the broken ones. There was also fragments of clothing and human tissue found.
Oh,
Ooh.
The researchers then found the bodies of Igor Dyatlov and Zindaya Kolmogorova in a different location, but their bodies were positioned as if they were moving back towards the tent, but it also looked like they may have been fleeing the tree.
Weird.
They also found the body of Rustem Slobodin, who also appeared to be trying to make his way back to the tent when he died. So far, all 5 of the 9 appeared to have died from hypothermia, despite all the other weird injuries.
well, there's definitely more to it than that.
Well, hypothermia can cause erratic behavior and what is known as paradoxical undressing. This is a phenomenon in which people start to undress because they feel hot, even though they're freezing to death.
Oh, that's torture.
I can't
Yeah,
even
that
imagine.
sucks.
So a legal inquest started immediately after these 5 bodies were found. A medical examiner found no injuries that might have led to their deaths, so it was concluded that they had all died of hypothermia. It would take 2 months of searching before they were able to find the remaining 4 travelers.
Holy shit.
Wow.
That May, when more of the snow in the area had melted, an indigenous group called the Mansi, who are kind of local hunters, they discovered the remains of what appeared to be a snow den. Now, a snow den is sort of like a makeshift igloo-style shelter to help create warmth even though you're surrounded by snow.
Mm-hmm.
Inside, workers found the bodies of Alexander, Nikolai, Semyon, and Ludmila. 3 of these bodies, their causes of death did not seem to be hypothermia. 3 of the 4 were dressed better than the others. However, there were signs that some of the clothing they were wearing had come from those who had died first within their group, and they had removed them and used them on themselves. Which,
Oh, crap.
yeah, let's be honest, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, in a survival situation, yeah, obviously you're going to do that.
Yeah, I hate to say it. As much as I love you guys, if you've passed and I'm freezing, I'm going to take your clothes, you know?
Yeah, you'll look real good in my bra.
Well, but realistically, if I passed, I would want you to take mine if it meant you would survive.
I would.
So, for example, Ludmila was wearing Alexander's burned, torn trousers, and her left foot and shin were wrapped in a torn jacket. Nikolai had a skull fracture so severe that there were pieces of bone in his brain.
Ooh,
Oh, God.
holy shit.
But they believe that's not what killed him,
Oh,
What?
wow.
which is fucking crazy.
That
That's
is crazy.
absurd.
So both Semyon and Ludmila had their chest had been crushed in,
What the
Oh,
fuck?
and their eye sockets were empty, and Ludmila was missing her tongue.
What the fuck happened here?
Sorry. That caught me off guard. Yeah, it's fucked up, right?
Yeah, I'm just like, what on earth? I can't even imagine like these researchers or the people recovering this thought when they were like,
It's like
oh, some people died of hypothermia, and now we're finding this.
this complete horror scene. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Alexander was missing his eyebrows. All the things to be missing.
right.
Yeah.
Like,
What
why
were they
does he get off
plucked out,
easy?
or was he skinned?
It doesn't, we don't have enough information. And
Oh, sorry, that's me wanting gory details.
No, but, and I
Gross.
wish I had them, but as we're going to go down and I'll, quote unquote, spoiler alert, this is Soviet Russia. So this, of course, is all very secretive because of the times. Yeah.
Naturally.
One of the 4, and it's unclear which one, had a twisted neck.
Ooh.
Now, understand that the force required to cause such damages as we're talking about, like the crushed chest cavities and things like that, the damage would have to be extremely high, something comparable to that of a car crash. Like that's the force. So no human being is doing this. Notably, the bodies had no external wounds associated with the bone fractures. So it's suspected that they were subjected to high levels of pressure, but not trauma. So no one's like,
Huh.
it's not like a bear sitting on them or something, because there's no, flesh wounds. There's nothing on the soft tissue. It's just crushed chest cavities.
Just blunt force trauma.
But no damage to the skin.
But no damage. That is weird as hell.
All four, and I mentioned this, all four of these bodies had soft tissue damage only to their heads and faces. Bizarre.
What the hell?
They had to have been targeting that for a reason, though, right?
I can't really speculate without, I don't know. There's not enough information because, again, Soviet Russia.
It's giving Bigfoot.
Just wait. So, a person named V.A. Vozorendeni, a forensic expert who performed the post-mortem examination, judged that these injuries happened after they died.
Oh.
Yeah. Fucking even weirder.
Yeah.
So there was initial speculation that the indigenous Mansi people, reindeer herders in the local area, had attacked and murdered the group for encroaching upon their lands. Several Mansi were interrogated, but the investigation indicated that the nature of the deaths did not support this hypothesis, as the only footprints that were visible were them, like the 9 people. So
right.
And the footprints were still mostly visible, so like obviously there wasn't enough snowfall. And there was no signs of any kind of hand-to-hand struggle. So journalists at the time were reporting on what parts of this they had. And they, of course, put this out there as best they could. So these are, over the years, this is what people have taken from this. That 6 members of the group died of hypothermia and the other 3 from fatal injuries. There were no indications of other people nearby, apart from the 9 of them. Again, the tent had been ripped open from the inside. The victims had died 6 to 8 hours after eating their last meal. Traces from the camp showed that all group members left the campsite on their own accord and on foot.
Without their boots.
Crazy. The report, and I should note that a lot of the reports state that there's no signs that they were running out of the tent, but walking. Which is
weird as fuck.
That doesn't add up at all.
Not at all. There are
right, like you're cutting open a tent to walk out of it?
Weird, right? It doesn't, none
what
of this
on
makes
earth?
sense. Exactly. Reports also state that some levels of radiation were found on some of the victims' clothing.
Oh,
Huh.
okay.
And the released documents contained no information about the condition of the hikers' internal organs. So if they were exposed to any kind of radiation, there's no information about how their bodies took it.
Interesting.
Probably not too well, I'm guessing.
I would assume not, yeah. And it would maybe...
Yeah, although like that usually has like different effects. I don't know, like radiation sickness.
Right, but it might explain why they felt warm. It might explain the guy's skin kind of turning gray and foam coming out of his mouth. There's a lot that could be explained from that.
Yeah.
I don't know
well,
about...
kind of random. Like, where's this radiation coming from?
Well, we're going to get into all that. Because
Oh, shit.
now, the theories of what might have happened. So the discoveries of some of the hikers' clothing containing traces of radiation fueled speculation that the hikers had died in some kind of weapons testing disaster. Now, the radioactivity on the clothes could be explained by the fact that 2 years before, there had been a nuclear incident known as the Kishtim disaster. One of the hikers on that trip had lived in the contaminated zone, and one of the others had helped clean up the mess of the disaster.
Oh.
So it's possible that they just sort of brought it with them. Which is a little weird.
Yeah, and a little weird, like they had brought that with them for a couple years, and then like
Right?
it would suddenly affect a bunch of people. Like that's weird.
Yeah, so it's again, there's a lot of questions about this. But despite, that knowledge, many Russians continue to suspect that the government was hiding something.
And to be fair, they
It's
have a
Soviet
reason to
Russia.
expect that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the
Can't
theories
blame them.
some of the
well,
theories
you could.
So some of the theories that we're not going to give too much credit, we're not going to talk for too long about, was the KGB, the CIA, and Yetis / Bigfoot. We will.
Okay, well, yeah, I was thinking about Yetis and Bigfoot.
Well, the interesting thing is, right, so their camera survived, and they were able to develop some of the photos, and there's a lot of interesting photos in there. But in one photo, in the background, there's a humanoid form behind them in the trees somewhere that's not part of this group of 9.
Oh.
Yeah, so the Yeti thing really ran.
Now,
Now,
I bet. I bet they ran with that.
Now, I got to be honest, I saw the image. I think it looks like a guy in a full-blown snowsuit kind of thing with like a ski mask. I think it looks more human than non-human, but obviously I wasn't there. And
that's what they want you to think, though.
But those are the ones we're not going to dig too deep into.
But I am going to look it up.
Yeah,
I found it.
Yeah. See, I think it looks human. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it like honestly looks like it could be one of them.
Exactly. So that's why, but they're insisting that wasn't one of them.
They were dead, so they can't really say it's not one of them, can they?
No, they cannot. So, but we have other theories, so here we go. The first one that we're going to cover very briefly because it's ridiculous is UFOs. So another group of hikers, roughly 50 kilometers or 31 miles south of where this took place, reported that they saw strange orange spheres in the sky to the north on the night of the incident. Similar spheres were observed in Ivdel and adjacent areas continually during the period from February to March of 1959 by various independent witnesses, including meteorology services and the military. These sightings were not noted in the 1959 investigation, and the various witnesses came forward years later, which is okay, maybe, but I doubt it. Especially, although it does open the new, although I think the new revelation that there have been documented UFO sightings by the U.S. government might give some credit to this, but I still don't buy it.
Right. It's like this is Soviet Russia. Like it's sure it's a UFO, but it could just be government.
Right. Well, that's our next one. So there's another speculation that the campsite fell within the path of a Soviet parachute mine exercise.
Okay, that's intense.
So this theory alleges that the hikers were awoken by loud explosions, fled the tent in a panic, shoeless, obviously, and found themselves unable to return to their supply. After some of the members had frozen to death, attempting to endure like the bombardment, others commandeered their clothing only to be fatally injured by subsequent parachute mine concussions. Now
you'd think they would find like remnants of that.
But again, if it's a government cover-up, they would not ever tell you.
This is true.
So there are records of parachute mines being tested by the Soviet military in that area around that time. Now, parachute mines detonate while they're still in the air, rather than blowing up when they hit the surface, and that produces signature injuries similar to those experienced by the hikers, as in heavy internal damage with little external trauma.
Interesting. Okay.
And this theory coincides with the reported sightings of glowing orange orbs falling or flying through the sky, as the parachutes might have looked funny from a distance.
Now, this is a very logical theory.
It's one of the more logical ones, yes. So there are, of course, this one is kind of obvious, but the theory is that all the injuries sustained, like the eyes and things like that, were scavenging animals. So that's a big one. It will come up throughout whenever they can't explain why body parts were missing. Doesn't explain why the one guy bit off a piece of his own hand, but
yeah, I don't know.
So a similar theory alleges that the government was testing radiological weapons, and based partly on the discovery of the radioactivity on their clothing. So some people think that maybe the government tested weapons on these people like a radiation weapon, which is kind of cool because that's the kind of thing we would have been doing during the Cold War.
Right.
But the radioactivity isn't dispersed equally among all the hikers and their equipment. So that doesn't really work either.
Yeah, and it sounds like some of that stuff was better explained by past exposure to radiation.
Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't expect them to experiment on a random group of hikers that they were gonna then leave there and not clean up the evidence.
Right.
I would expect them to do that on like a war prisoner or something.
Yeah, that's very true. Although there is, and I'm not going to go into it at all, really, because I don't know how credible it is, but there's theory that one or two of these people actually worked for the government, and they were going out into weird, like, remote areas to put down things that would give off a radiological signature to confuse the U.S. when we were doing our, like, spy searches.
Interesting.
So that's one theory, but along with the KGB and the CIA stuff, I left all that out. So. So, of course, the initial suppression by the Soviet authorities of files describing their disappearance obviously makes everyone think that this is a cover-up and that they're concealing information. So there's a lot of mistrust across the board, even at the time. There was another hypothesis that came out in 2013. A man by the name of Donnie Eckar released a book called Dead Mountain, and he claims that the wind going around that particular mountain created a Kármán vortex, which can produce infrasound capable of inducing panic attacks in human beings.
What?
He claims, his theory is, that the infrasound generated by the wind as it passed over the top of the mountain was responsible for causing such physical discomfort and mental distress in the hikers that they began to panic and were driven out of the tent by whatever means necessary and fled down the slope.
Huh.
That's horrifying.
He said that by the time they were further down the hill and they had been out of the path of the infrasound and they regained their composure, it was so dark that they were unable to figure out where they had started. I don't know if I believe that, only because there were two groups in two very different places.
Yeah, it's a theory.
Yeah. Well, he also says that he thinks the blunt force trauma injuries were the result of them stumbling over the edge of a ravine in the darkness and landing on rocks at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how much I believe that.
Yeah, and it made it sound like from the medical examiner that those blunt force traumas happened after they died. So
yeah, that's true. You're right. So that person's theory doesn't really hold water. I agree.
No, not really. I guess at least that part of it.
Right. So one very short theory, and this one I find really odd, is that high winds blew one of the members away, and the others were attempting to rescue that person.
That's like something out of a cartoon. Absolutely not.
Well, the question remains, if that were the case, why is the tent still there?
Right. And why aren't they wearing their boots?
And why didn't they all get blown away?
Yeah, that's weird.
Another really implausible one, but I'm going to include it because it's, I guess, possible in a weird, twisted way, is that there was an argument between group members, possibly related to a romantic triangle or something, and that it led to violence.
Yeah, but that wouldn't take out everybody, right?
No, but if one person was doing it, if all of a sudden you're all in the tent for warmth and one person starts attacking another, and maybe everyone flees through the opening and they do something to close the opening or to keep you from being able to get out, and then you have to cut your way out of the tent, that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not saying it's likely. I don't think it is, but it's kind of possible, but still doesn't explain the internal injuries with no external evidence.
Yeah, there's probably like a combination of all these things somehow.
Right. Well, we're going to get to it at the end, but there's a scientist who thinks they figured the whole thing out.
Ooh.
Yeah, and unfortunately I cannot pronounce her name, but I'll edit it in after the fact once I
Yes.
practice the fuck out of it. So at the time, the official conclusion was that the members of the group had died because of compelling natural force. That's the official answer from the Russian government.
Well, that
Love
sounds
an
like
official
cover
answer
up.
from the Russian government.
Yep. So the inquest officially ended in May of 1959, and because they felt that there was an absence of a guilty party and wouldn't search into it any further. So basically,
And
it's
I
like,
guess
yeah, like,
at a certain point you give up.
yeah, exactly. So at this point, the files were sent to a secret archive, and in 1997, it was revealed from the negatives from the camera that were kept in a private archive by one of the investigators, and they basically found these photos and started releasing them, and that of course is where the Yeti theory starts and all this crazy shit. So the diaries of the hiking party actually fell into Russia's public domain in 2009.
Wow.
And then people started really digging in, and more conspiracy theories came in. Again, we've discussed most of them. In 2019, the Russian government reopened the case that was now known as the Dyatlov Pass incident. A man by the name of Andrei Kuryakov, the prosecutor who led the new investigation, proposed his own theory as to what happened. And this is officially the theory of the Russian government now.
Wow.
Are you ready for this one?
Oh, I'm so
No.
ready.
An avalanche.
Oh my God.
What?
Yep, an avalanche. He said that during the night, the snowfield above the tent must have started to slide down. And of course, it started pushing the tent a little bit, and it kind of blocked the entrance. So the group wakes up and starts to panic. And before they can put on their shoes or clothes, they cut their way out. And they exit through the hole and scatter in numerous different directions. Because some of them are not fully dressed, they split into two groups. The ones that aren't fully dressed try to stay near the camp, while those who were a bit more prepared go and maybe try to find help. And the first group dies of hypothermia, while the others, of course, somehow get hurt and end up where they were.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't buy it either. And I can see why people are still questioning that official explanation.
Yeah, for sure.
So a group of scientists or researchers from Switzerland decided to test this theory. So in 2021, Johann Gahm and Alexander Pezrin published a paper in Communications, Earth, and Environment that used a mathematical model to determine if a what they call the slab avalanche was possible given the location of the tent and the weather conditions at the time.
Okay, there we go.
They concluded that it was possible. Whether it happened is another matter, because there's a lot of evidence that contradicts the avalanche theory. The fact that the location of the incident did not have any signs of an avalanche having taken place. You could still see
right. They saw the whole tent. They saw the whole camp.
Yeah, the tent, their footprints. So
that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And the bodies that were found later were covered with they were covered with very shallow layers of snow. So again, avalanche would have completely covered them, and their cause of death would have more likely have been suffocation.
Right. Yeah.
In that area, avalanches had never been reported before this incident and have not been reported since this incident. So
Go figure.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to buy that theory.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
Do you rent it?
All right,
You're
that was a good one. I'm
fired.
taking that.
All right. Now, Dyatlov was an experienced skier and much older than the other people in the group. So, he would have known better than to put the tent in the path of what could have been an avalanche. That's another big one. Researcher Theodora Hajiska, her theory is that they did, in fact, set up camp higher up in between, because she said the tent they had needed to be connected between two trees. And where it was found was not in between any trees at all. So she says that the campsite where some of the bodies were found was probably where they had initially put the tent, in between two trees. And the fact that there were tree branches that had been broken on the lower part of that tree was also in keeping with the kind of snow den they might have built around the tent, because they would have used that wood on the ground to keep their bodies from being in direct contact with the snow. And she says that it's possible that something shifted in the snow and caused everything to move, causing them all to flee the tent. And the tent, in some sort of avalanche kind of way, may have moved. And some of them may still have been inside the tent, which is why they had to cut their way out. And you see bare footprints. But her theory doesn't really answer the rest of the questions about what happened to the high-impact injuries.
Yeah.
So that is where we're at. Like, this gruesome fate of these 9 hikers have generated more theories than anything else, including Yetis and Bigfoot. And it's probably going to remain a mystery forever because no one can really know for sure. So, what are your thoughts?
Wow, really your turn to give us an unsolved one, huh?
Yeah, you're taking my shtick here. What the heck?
Like I said, I've wanted to do this one forever because my theory ranges, my thoughts are the government is responsible, either whether it was parachute mines or they were testing some kind of weapon. I'm blaming the Russian government, the military.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And the way that they had some of these absurd theories and, the way they gave the official cause seemed very
hypothermia and then an avalanche.
Yeah. Like all those reasons are weird. And then what did you say they said for the official reason again?
The first one was hypothermia, and then the second.
No, avalanche, right?
At the very end.
The avalanche.
So it was the avalanche. That was the official last.
Yeah, that's where the government is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. I'm sorry. There were just so many theories thrown around that they're all nonsensical and just.
And Joyous
got to be more.
And Joyous at a point, some of each may be true, and it may all.
Right, there's probably a little bit of truth in each of them.
So the question is, Joyous, I'll start with you. Do you think they were murdered, or do you think this was an accident?
Can I say manslaughter? Like whatever it was, because I think there's some. It what's the phrase? Like it bears water or something? I don't know.
Okay.
It holds water. The theory that the government was involved somehow and that something's being covered up, I think. Or it could be a case of like they don't want it to look like they don't know what happened. So they just gave an answer because it's like that's what they do when they don't actually have an answer. They to save face and make themselves look better, they say there's an answer.
And that makes sense.
I don't know. I think it sounds like maybe an accident, but someone's lying.
Right. And I can see your point because yeah, if the government was using weapons, regardless of whether or not they targeted these people on purpose or if it was an accident, they don't want to admit that. And they probably would think that most of the population would just take their story at face value. Because we kind of live in a society like that right now, although most of us are questioning every news source or every source of information. But there's a lot of people who just trust the government.
Yeah.
And your thoughts, Jameson? Do you think it was murder/manslaughter or an accident or what?
Definitely believe that it was murder. I believe that they may have found something or stumbled upon something that they may not have been meant to see or hear, and that the government did everything they could to scapegoat these people.
See, I can see that because my thought was, again, I go back to the testing of radiological weapons. Maybe they were testing a weapon that caused high pressure to hit somebody, crushing their chest but not injuring their body. It's weird. The whole thing is crazy. The whole thing is crazy. And that's why I wanted to cover it, because I've literally been sitting on this for years and I'm like, you know what? It's time. Let's do this.
It's interesting. I liked mixing it up a little bit. I like a fun death mystery.
Yes.
Sure, you like them when he reports them.
Yeah, but yours are like awful in that we don't get an answer. It's just like a bunch of dead children and we don't know who did it. That sucks sometimes.
I mean, it's still frustrating. I hate that there's not an answer and we don't get to like say what our theory is and then actually find out what the answer is, but
Right. But
it was interesting for sure.
yeah, this one is such a bizarre case, and even though we don't know, this is one of the ones that. So Jameson and I talk about this all the time because we both do like the theories of unsolved cases, but I've reached a point where unsolved more frustrates me, but this is a good one because there are so many honest possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one could easily be it was just an avalanche, but we don't know that.
And I think that's the how we talk about all the time, and I say to you, there are so many things that it could be, and every time I try to articulate what I'm saying, you're just like, nope, that there's too many possibilities. This is exactly what I mean and how
Right.
I try to get my point across, where yes, there's always going to be hundreds of possibilities with unsolved stuff here, but to have something that's actually a possibility, and can be shown as a possible reason, that's what excites me and gets me hooked to these kinds of things.
Right. For me, though, I just hate not knowing. But this one's a little different. I almost like this one because I don't know it. Am I fucked up for that?
We're all fucked up, so it doesn't matter.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again. We will see you soon. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.